Awesome. Everybody got a form built? Yes, you got a couple standard fields put on there. So now what happens with that? Let's figure out, when you fill out that form, where does it go? Where do we see that on a student record? All right, so we're going to go ahead and fill out a form together. So if everyone goes to the form page here for the form that they just created, and we're going to click on the external link, which you should already be familiar with. And now you're going to watch me type very badly. And I'm going to use my personal email address here. Don't email me, okay, promise? Who should our test record be? How about Kermit the Frog today? Kermit the Frog. Feel free to go ahead and do this as well if you'd like to have a test record in your account. It's important to have test records in your account so we can see what this looks like to create an actual record. So when we fill this form out, it's actually going to create your first record in your Slate instance, which is very exciting. So go ahead and make up a fun person. We all have favorite people that we like to make up. Where does he live? Maybe Biloxi, Mississippi. How's that? Again, nothing more exciting than watching someone fill out a form. Gesundheit. Although later on, you're going to see me map fields when we upload data. That's also pretty exciting. And again, we're going to see that mobile phone number does populate correctly. However, Slate already knows that that's not a real phone number, but we're going to go ahead and keep that in there. What high school does Kermit go to? Maybe there must be like perfect. Bayou Academy in Mississippi. Perfect. So we have all this. We're ready to submit that. We're going to go ahead and click submit. Slate's going to say, oh, actually, that is a real address. I wasn't expecting that to be a real address. But Slate does a real-time address calculation to make sure that that's a real address. And if it's not a real address, then it's going to say, hey, this doesn't look like a real address. You might want to fix this. And it's going to give students the opportunity to fix that or go ahead and submit it the way that it is there. So great. Your responses have been submitted. You might say, this is a little bit of a boring screen. You might want to update what this looks like on this confirmation page. Don't worry, we'll get there, but not right this moment. Right this moment, we're going to go back to the form that you created on the form page. Click refresh there, and there we have our first record. Congratulations, you now have a record in your clean slate. So let's go ahead and click on that record down there. And we'll see this is the form registration for that student. So this form registration that we submitted, you'll see that is exactly what I just typed on the form. And these values will stay there forever and for always, just like that, unless they're edited on this form itself. We can also see some information about where that form was submitted. If it was submitted internally by a Slate user, we would be able to see exactly who that Slate user was that submitted it, so we can see some great information there. And at the very top, we can click on the name for registrant, and it will take us to Kermit's page. There he is, in all of his glory. And the first question you're going to ask is, wow, how did you get that cool picture of Kermit the Frog up there? It's like you planned this. Yes, indeed, we did plan this. That is pulling from a website called Gravatar.com. So if you're familiar with Gravatar, it is something that is used all over the internet to be able to show a picture or an image of a person, and it's associated with the email address. So that's why I used my email address here, so you could see that cute picture. So this is the Slate standard record. Yours should look pretty similar to this. It probably doesn't have the Gravatar, but it probably has everything else, right? It has the address over here on the right-hand side. It has the phone number and email address that we typed in that form. So again, just by submitting that form, we know where all of that data should go. So it created the record, and it put all that data in the right place. So I'm just going to give you a brief tour of the person record, see what that looks like, see where some of this data goes and how you can change this information, view this information, etc. This is a pretty simplistic record, and we're going to see a more complicated one in a few moments. Question? Absolutely. So the question was, when she was filling out the form, there may have been a mistake there. So how do we correct the information having to do with the school? Because the school is showing up incorrectly somewhere down here. So we will see how to correct that in just a moment when we get to the schools tab. But let's stay here on this dashboard tab for a while. We see here the tabs up at the top. These are all the standard tabs that come with every person record, and it will default to the dashboard tab there. The dashboard tab is read-only. So it's all information that you can see here, and it's going to populate with a variety of different things. Up here at the top, we have entry term and student type listed up here. You probably don't see that because this is a custom dashboard that we've created. So many ways to customize the views of what you see in Slate. We'll talk about how to customize some of those things later on. We see the academic history, we see the school that person has attended down here, but this is not actually the place that you change that school. We'll see where that is in a moment. So again, this is just high-level stuff. We also see tags over here. We'll talk about tags in a few minutes. Again, a very high-level way of marking a record. And you see that we only have a handful of these, and we recommend only having a handful of these. You don't want to have 50 tags on there. Question? Does the school only show up if the school is in your system and if it's selected from that form? Right, so does the school only show up if it's auto-suggested to you and it's connected to the school? No is the short answer. There's a way to have information on here that is not connected up to a specific school, but we can talk about the details of how that works. It's not showing up, but we can talk about why that is later. But if the school does exist, then it will pull the information from what it has and write it on here, but it doesn't have to make that connection. So we can talk more about details. Another question. Where does the GeoMarket population data come from? Yes, so the GeoMarkets are actually already preloaded into your system. So you can use that information if you'd like, and it pulls directly from the address there that we entered on the form. So if you don't use GeoMarkets, you certainly can, but you don't have to, but it's gonna automatically populate there. How did I make it pull the information from Gravatar? That's automatically in there. So so in this case, I use my personal email address, and on Gravatar, I set up that image connected to my email address, and so it automatically populates there. So if someone has set up a Gravatar, it will populate there. If they have not set that up, clearly nothing is going to show there. My guess is that most of you don't have something populated on Gravatar. Great. Let's move on to the next tab here for timeline. This is a particularly helpful one. We can see everything that the student has done or has an action that they have taken, an email that we have sent to them, something that has happened to their record is going to be here on the timeline. This first tab over here is going to be pretty standard. It's going to be the forms that they've submitted, an email that's been sent to them, etc. If we go over here on the right-hand side, we can see that there are several other sub-tabs here. And this is a pretty standard look for a Slate page, that you have the information on the left, and then you have the navigation bar on the right. So you'll see that all throughout Slate, and this is one of the ways that we see that. If we click on interactions, we can see some more granular detail there. We have some other options here to be able to sort and look at just what you want on there. So if I just want to see the messages that have been sent to that person, I can just click the messages, and we can just see those. Again, this is a brand new record, so there's only one thing on here. But in the record we'll look at in a minute, there are quite a few things that we're going to want to be able to sort on those. And you can also search on those interactions as well. An interaction is something that we'll talk about a little bit, something that happens outside of Slate that you want to record on their timeline here. So we'll be able to talk about how to create those as well. The audit log is also pretty handy. You can see in granular detail how exactly something happened to a record. So if you have created some fields and that field was changed and you want to know who changed that, you can go in here and you can see the user that changed that, or you can see the upload that was made that changed that field. So some very granular data that can help you in fact-finding why something happened will be right here on the audit log. And again, you can search by dates here as well, so you can narrow it down to a real specific window. Lots of options once you have a lot of things on there. Campaigns we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about drip marketing. We talk about emailing to students, but we'll leave that one for now. You may not have the Giving tab. If you are a school that has advancement in your instance or are interested in having advancement at your institution, Slate has an entire Giving module that you can enable. Happy to have conversations about that at a later time. Profile tab. This is where a lot of the information you're going to go to change information. This first page here of the profile, this is all more read-only information, that same kind of information that you were looking at before. And then over here on the right-hand side, there are all these sub-tabs, and this is where we're actually going to go to change information. So under biographical, for instance, if we click that, this is where it looks more like a form now, right? You're familiar with what a form looks like. You can see here, these are those fields you can go in and change this. So let's say we now know that the preferred first name for this student is KFrog. So we can now go in and type in a preferred name there. And we can go ahead and click Save there. And if I click Refresh, we'll see that the preferred name populates right there as well. So again, we can make a change to a record, click Save, and it will show up right there. Same thing with contact addresses. This is where the email and phone numbers display. This is where the address information is displayed and where you can add and edit new information there. Same thing with relationships. That's mostly used for parents of high school students, etc. Now, if we get to schools, we can say this is where the school is located. So for the person who may have entered that information incorrectly, if you click on the school there, this is the information that Slate pulled from that record of the school and pasted here into this student's record. So all of these things over here on the right-hand side, these are all this one-to-many relationship. So we talked about person record. We talked about the person's scope. Every person is going to have one record in Slate. But as we mentioned, we can have multiple applications. We can have multiple schools on the record, multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses. So we talk a lot about this one-to-many relationship. And so this is where these many, if you will, can all be stored. And you can have additional pieces of data related to each of those many, if you will. But that person is still only going to have one person record. Okay? Any questions so far? Great, so if you need to change that school, you can go ahead and change that school from there. Scores, test scores, SAT, ACT scores, all those test scores. We have probably seen that test before if you want to bring that test into Slate. So this is where you can view and edit those scores, although we can import those in another way. Jobs, courses, interests, sports, all these other things that you can do and have on that one-to-many relationship. Under account here, we can set up somebody's account. We can also impersonate their record, so we can see what it looks like if they're checking their decision. Later on Friday, we'll get to decisions. But you can see what their instance of Slate looks like from the other side, right? We can also create applications. We'll talk more about applications from here on Thursday. When you create an application, there will be a new tab here specific to that application. So if somebody has multiple applications, they will have multiple application tabs up at the top there. We also see this Materials tab. Materials can be related to the person record. So you can have a transcript that's related to the person record, or you could have let's say, an institutional financial aid form that's related to the application itself. So on the Materials tab, you'll be able to see the person-scoped materials as well as any application-scoped materials. Okay, we'll talk more about scope as the week goes on. Don't forget that word scope. So we also see here up at the top, we see these icons. You've seen these icons a few times already this morning, but this is the general look and feel of Slate here. This is where you're going to log in first time. So if you click on the big word where it says Slate here, every time you log in, that is what you're going to see. You're going to see that Twitter feed right there, and then you're going to see some fancy things below there that we have set up that are called widgets, and you can create these really high-level glances for things, whether it just be a message or whether it be a chart, whatever you want to show to your users. And you can personalize those as well to only show for a specific group of people, etc. So that's the first place you're going to go. The other tabs up here, so the Records tab, if you want to look for a record, you know that there's a Kermit the Frog record in here. So in order to find that record, you don't have to go to the form first and then click on the record from that form list. There must be another way to find that, right? So there's actually two ways we can find a record that we know exists. The first one is up here by clicking on the Records tab, and it takes us to this lookup screen. So from here we can just type in Kermit, and there he is. He populates right there, and we can just click on that link right from there to get to his record. The other place you can find that, as you may have surmised already, is on the upper right, and it is that search bar. It's the same search bar that we just found previously when we clicked on the Lookup tab, and there's Kermit. And we can see in this, we have a couple different options here. It's showing that prospect for Kermit the Frog, but it's also showing that there is a Kermit High School in Kermit, Texas. Of course there is. So we can also use email address up in this search bar as well. So it's definitely a powerful search bar. And you can change some of the looks, the look of what shows up in that search bar as well, if you would like. Phone number is not searchable up there, correct? Not by default. Phone number is not. For those of you who can't see Trevor's face, it's kind of like,
numbers you might want to search by, like their Slate ID or their Common App ID or their Banner ID. And if you make phone numbers searchable, now we gotta check phone numbers and IDs because like numbers are all numbers, you know what I mean? So it'll actually slow your search down if you do phone number. So
But things like Common App ID or your SIS ID, those are certainly things that we see regularly. So again, you can change what is searchable up there, but the default is that phone number is not there. I mentioned student status a little bit. So I mentioned Kermit here, that Kermit is a prospect, and we can see he's under the heading of prospect. Up here, we see that there is a status right here. So the three basic statuses in Slate are applicant, inquiry, and prospect. That might be a little bit of a change from those words and what those words might mean to you in your system. But we think of a prospect as someone who is not engaged with us at all, maybe someone who is in a name buy or something like that. An inquiry is someone who has raised their hand in the process, filled out a form, submitted a test score, something like that. And then an applicant obviously is someone who has either started or completed an application. So those are the standard statuses, and there are rules that go along with that. We'll talk about rules and how that is populated. And in general, we recommend keeping those three statuses. So somebody is either going to be, is going to be one of those three things at any time. And then right here, this is their Slate reference number. So you'll be able to reference this to pull up information about that student at any time. The other things up here, just to mention these, the query tool. We'll talk about querying when we want to get information out of Slate. Today is all about getting information into Slate. We'll get information out of Slate tomorrow using the query tool. The reader, we'll get to the reader later on this week, how you actually read applications. Deliver is how we send email messages en masse. If we want to send a big group message, we do that through Deliver. But let's say I wanted to just send one quick message to this person. I can go ahead and I can click the email address right from that record and send an email directly from there. And it automatically populates with the sender email, the recipient email, et cetera, and then you can just send that message from there, and you have that full WYSIWYG editor, what you see is what you get, editor right there to send that message in a one-off way to that person. And then as soon as I sent that message, it would appear on their timeline as a sent message. Yes? So the question was, can you send from any email address? So right here we see that Trevor's email address, since Trevor is the one that logged in, his email address defaulted there. We also have this other email address of Slate Launchpad here, and then we have other, and that just gives you a box like that. Yes, yes. You're going to want to make sure that you set up some settings behind the scenes for your DKIM settings and those kind of things to make sure that an email like this doesn't go into spam, and we can help talk about what some of that stuff looks like as well. All right. Let's just finish these up at the top here. Inbox. Inbox is if you are getting emails in from students and you want those to go directly into Slate. You can set that up to manage the inflow of emails directly from there. Forms, you already know. You're already experts on forms. But remember, fundamental tools, we're going to come back to forms several times. Now that you know forms, you're going to see them used all over the place. We have events. We'll talk about events later, how to set those up, as well as scheduler for interviews. And again, database, you already know a lot of the tools that already exist in the database. But as we set things up through the week, the database tool is where you're going to go most frequently to set things up there. Any questions before we take a pause? She asked, mine does not have a details tab. Hers does have a details tab. Anybody else have a details tab? So the people who have details tabs are people who have had other people from their institutions come to Launchpad and create those in this instance of Clean Slate. So we're going to talk about how to create custom tabs. So if you want to display information, where do you display custom fields that you create? And we will get there. So if you don't have a details tab, don't be jealous of the ones who do. You will soon have those yourself. Exactly. It's coming up. Coming right up, as they say. Any questions? Great. Let's take 10 minutes, and we'll see you soon.